Welcome back, and now to a story you will only see on NewsNation. In a cable news exclusive, we spoke to an off-duty police sergeant who stopped a possible mass shooting at a mall. He was working his extra job. This is Sergeant Kendrick Simpo. He was at the Houston Galleria Mall when he got a call that a man was walking with a rifle in one hand and a Bible in the other. Now, the suspect, identified as Guido Herrera, was walking towards the entrance where hundreds of children were attending a dance competition at the time, and Simpo was only armed with a handgun, but he decided to keep it holstered, to not draw it, hoping not to cause a panic. Amazingly, he was able to tackle Herrera instead. He says he was mentally prepared to get shot that day.
You just got to have that mindset that you're going to win no matter what the cost is. When I was wrestling with him with the gun, that was the first thing I noticed, that the muzzle was pointed towards my thighs and my leg. And I just automatically knew, okay, if this gun potentially goes off, it's going to hurt. And deep down, I knew that I was in the fight for my life and I wasn't going to give up.
What an amazing man. And since Herrera, the suspect, did not technically shoot anyone, he was only charged with a misdemeanor. Just a month after the mall incident, Herrera showed up again, but this time at the Houston FBI headquarters, demanding to speak with the director. And a gun was found in his car. But again, he was only able to be charged with a misdemeanor. And in total, he was sentenced to 18 months with credit for time served. So we want to bring this back to our roundtable panel now. Herrera's attorney called him, quote, a gun-loving Texan who has a right to possess the weapons. Should he be able to walk free? Let's start with Candace on this one.
A gun and a Bible. So the problem here, right, is that you have someone who had the potential to cause another mass tragedy in this country and only was able to be charged with a misdemeanor. That is absolutely wrong. If we are going to say that people, like we just said in our last segment, that people should be allowed to have their guns wherever they want to because they're responsible and they know what they're doing, then they need to be held accountable when they are potentially risking the lives of several people.
Dr. Tracy, we saw you smiling. What are your thoughts?
Well, in states that place at the center the value of the right to bear arms, you see permissive gun laws. In states that place protecting the public at the center, then you see protective laws. You see laws that have greater sentences. You see the risk of being charged as a felony. Wobblers is what they call them. It could be a misdemeanor or a felony based on the circumstances. And that's really what it comes down to.
I mean, Erin, you must have some thoughts on this.
I mean, I certainly do. Intent is certainly important in this when you're talking about the legal ability to carry a firearm specific to what the law is in Texas, right? What was the intent of that individual? I haven't heard any reporting or seen any on that. I would certainly be interested to know why there was a misdemeanor charge if there was one relative to the FBI. Was it that he had the firearm in a no-gun zone on federal property? That in and of itself is breaking the law and should be charged accordingly. But the kind of fuzziness on this here is, one is intent. I'm not saying I would be walking around with a long arm rifle myself, especially in an open atmosphere like that. But if he was within the confines of the law, then the structure problem here is the law itself, and that would be something that the state of Texas would have to look at. And so since he didn't meet whatever the threshold is for the felony charge in the state, then the question is, what are the lawmakers going to do if they feel that this was a potentially dangerous situation? How would they handle that differently with laws?
Well, and Erin, if I can put you on the spot here for a moment, we know that his attorney says he's just a gun-loving Texan. He never fired a single shot. We know this. Should the suspect have his guns taken away preemptively?
Well, that's a red flag law, and they don't necessarily have those in Texas. Again, that's a very tough situation, right? Could those be used in a way that is nefarious against an individual if they just want to have the firearm taken away from someone that they don't like? Or in a domestic violence situation, if the batterer or the battery, right, the batterer calls the cops and has a firearm taken away from someone who's able to defend themselves. These kind of hypotheticals about what would you do if the law was different, if the situation was different, doesn't really help the situation. But what would help is a conversation about mental health, especially if you're worried that this individual has the potential or a mental issue in which he should not have the firearm. Again, those are red flag laws. They get very slippery in terms of the ability to adjudicate and the ability to be able to walk away if you were wrongly accused with your firearms? Do they turn into a no-fly list where you have no opportunity to adjudicate yourself?
And, we certainly have heard this mental health rhetoric from the GOP for about 20 years now. Red flag laws being in place or not being placed. Aaron, I do want to ask you specifically, do you think in this case, this man should have his guns taken away?
I can't speak to that, and I can't answer that question because I don't know the man's mental acuity. I don't know what the situation is here, so I can't be able to say yes or no definitively the way you would so cleanly like me to. There has to be an investigation into the individual. Rights do still matter, and those are important factors that need to be considered in this. I would not be an individual carrying a long-arm rifle with multiple rounds in an open atmosphere. I don't know this guy to be able to speak to that directly.
And
Dr.
Natasha,
Tracy.
I don't even know what the other panelists would say to this, but I will take the argument even further. I think we all can agree that Sergeant Simple acted best in this situation.
Yes.
Again, this is the training. Instead of him pulling his own weapon in that situation, he chose to take that suspect down, keeping everyone safe. This is why it's important that those who are licensed to carry and those who have the training are the ones who are actually pulling a weapon in a situation like this.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that that man is a hero. I do wonder if anyone on the panel tonight is willing to tell me one way or another, do you think that this man should have his guns taken away preemptively?
Based on
Yes.
what we know today, no. Based on the information that's available, no, because there's no allegation of a mental health issue. He was charged with misdemeanors. Generally speaking, throughout the country, a misdemeanor will not have your guns removed from you unless you're in certain states. For example, in California, there's a bunch of misdemeanors that will qualify you for having your guns removed. But generally speaking, based on what we know today, no.
Candace, what do you have to say?
In a world where we just buried 19 children, I could care less about his mental state. He walked into a public place with a long-arm rifle and 120 rounds. If he never has a gun again in his life, then it would be well with my soul.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.